A few months ago, I once again came across the Tokyo Tower of Babel. It's this old idea from a Japanese professor wondering where the rapid growth of cities like Tokyo might eventually lead. Standing 10,000 meters from top to bottom, with enough space for 30 million people, it's probably the tallest, most ambitious building ever seriously envisioned. But what if we take it further? What if we design one colossal building that fits all humans on Earth? How huge would it need to be? And what would it ideally look like? For today's video, we came up with a giant structure of our own. A building so large that 8.3 billion humans could live inside. By the way, when we're done, we'll need your help to find a name for it. So, before we design it, we need the perfect location. Somewhere wide, flat and geologically stable. We should rule out any mountainous regions, like these ones. Also, any areas which are prone to earthquakes. That was an issue with the Tokyo Tower of Babel, as Tokyo is sitting right on a tectonic belt. Coastal erosion could be a problem too, so we should probably avoid any regions too close to the sea. Having said that, we need access to water for drinking and sanitation. The average person needs 100 liters of water every day. For all the people on Earth, that works out at more than 800 billion liters. If we're avoiding coastlines, we should probably make sure that there are rivers nearby instead. So let's look at this map of world rivers. This spot in Brazil is an option. No mountains, no earthquakes, plenty of water. Although it's in the middle of the Amazon. Ideally, we don't want to chop down too many trees. So how about here, on the banks of the Mississippi? It's the largest river in North America by discharge volume. If we could harness a bit more than half that water, we'd have enough for everyone in our building. We could also pump water from the Great Lakes to the north, or from the Gulf of Mexico to the south, which would require massive desalination. It's also flat and stable, no rainforest to clear. The climate is also pretty temperate, especially over the summer. That's great for power. We can build solar farms. Overall, this feels like a good spot to start. Now, let's work out what this building will actually look like. In this video, we'll try some different designs to get the optimal layout. But as a starting point, let's imagine a building shaped like a giant cube. The question is, how giant will this cube need to be? It's time to do some math. After looking at a couple of research papers, it seems as though an average human needs 30 square meters of residential living space. If we multiply that number by 8.3 billion, we get, hold on, just working it out here, 249 billion square meters. For context, that's just a little bit larger than the size of the United Kingdom. But that's just our residential space, apartments, that kind of thing. If people are going to live here, they'll need other space as well. Shops, hospitals and schools, transport, hallways, and basically everything else. We want to make sure that the people here have a decent quality of life. For simplicity, let's just assume an additional 60% of extra floor space. That brings us to 398.4 billion square meters, or 398,400 square kilometers. Much bigger than the area of the UK then. We're now looking at something slightly larger than Japan. That's how much space we'll need for the whole of the world's population. Now let's work out how to fit all that space into one colossal cube. Quick disclaimer, I'll be doing lots of math in this video. I'll skip over most of it, but I thought we could do this first calculation together. Okay, we need 398.4 billion square meters of floor space. First, let's turn that into a volume to give us our total living space. We'll assume that all the rooms in our structure have a height of 3 meters. That gives us a total living space of 1,195.2 billion cubic meters. That's the total volume of space we'll need in our cube. So this cube would need to be roughly 10.6 kilometers long, 10.6 kilometers wide and 10.6 kilometers tall. Actually, that's almost the same height as the Tokyo Tower of Babel. For context, when you travel in a commercial airplane, that's roughly how high you're flying at. It's a staggeringly colossal structure. And it would be big enough to fit all the people on Earth. Obviously, this design has a few problems. 3 years ago, we actually made another video a bit like this one. We only covered it briefly, but we mentioned the idea of everyone living in a cube. We got lots of comments like these. And one of you raised a really important point. Most of the people living in a cube would have zero access to sunlight. But how many? We can actually calculate that as well. As promised, we'll skip over the math here. Turns out 99.6% will be stuck in the middle, with no windows and no sunlight. For the people inside these apartments, they may as well be living underground. As I said before, we want to make sure that this structure has decent living standards. Sunlight deficiency doesn't feel like an option. Also, would the people living in this cube even tolerate this window inequality? Surely the people living inside would rebel against the others on the edge. So instead of a giant cube, let's try some other shapes. We'll be trying some unusual, intricate designs a bit later. But first, let's try one more simple design and see if we can fit in more apartments with windows. How about this? A giant pyramid. After all, the Tokyo Tower of Babel was pretty pyramid-like, and a pyramid seems to be much more stable and realistic than a straight wall going up. Again, let's start by working out the size. The volume of a pyramid is a third times a to the power of 3, and we know that the volume we need for it is this. Rearranging gives us 15.3 kilometers on each side, and 15.3 kilometers in height, so it's quite a bit wider and taller than our cube design. As for windows, let's work this out. Only 0.34% of apartments would have windows. I actually didn't expect that. That's even worse than the cube. There's also another problem with both ideas. They're not very scalable. Imagine we built a giant cube or pyramid, but then the population increased. How would we expand our building to make extra space? We'd probably need to add some layers to the sides like this. Not impossible, but it does feel awkward, especially in the pyramid design. And if you used to have an apartment with a window, well, not anymore. Maybe it's time to step back from these designs and start thinking outside the box. We need a shape with more surface area to increase the number of windows. Also a shape which scales more naturally. How about a giant honeycomb structure? With these hollow sections at the core of each hexagon, there should be a lot more windows. But the math will be a bit tricky on this one, so let's work this out. In terms of size, each of our hexes will look like this. 100 meters long on the outer edges and 50 meters long on the inner edges. To hit the volume we need, we'll need to build 17,743 hexes. That would roughly take up an area of 20 by 23 kilometers at a structural height of 3,457 meters. In other words, this honeycomb would be significantly shorter than our cube design, but it would take up a lot more space. But now for the important part. How many people would have windows? Surely this design gets a lot more light. Okay, we're finally getting somewhere. In this honeycomb design, 14% of the apartments will have windows. That still isn't perfect, but it's already a lot better. This honeycomb structure definitely feels like a step in the right direction. But again, there are definitely some problems. Even though it's shorter than our other designs, 3,457 meters is still a ridiculous height for a structure. The higher you build, the more pressure you exert on the lower portions of a building, and the more likely it is to collapse. I mean, the tallest building right now is the Burj Khalifa at just 828 meters. So let's try out one more design, something a bit more realistic. Before we take a look, I just wanted to say, if you're enjoying this video, please remember to subscribe. Our animations and videos in general are all human-made, so this would support us a lot. So to create this final design, let's get some inspiration. This is the Eixample district in Barcelona. It was built in the 19th and 20th centuries, based on the ideas of this guy, Ildefons Cerdà. Cerdà was a bit of a genius, a pioneer in urban planning. And we can definitely learn a few things from him. His design used a grid-like arrangement of blocks. On all 4 sides of every block, there were apartments with plenty of windows. The streets were kept wide, which also improved sunlight and airflow. You'll also notice these notches on the corner of each block. They help to open the streets even more. So how can we use this in our own plans? We'll start by building a concrete base, 100 meters in height. This base will be dense and sturdy, with plenty of compressive strength. That way, there shouldn't be a risk of a structural collapse. On top of this base, we'll build thousands of tower blocks. They'll be inspired by Cerdà's block designs, with open spaces on all sides. Sky bridges will run from block to block, making it easy to move back and forth, while roads and railways run along the gaps below. We'll roughly match the scale of Cerdà's block, give or take, 100 meters per block and 20 meters for streets. Having said that, Cerdà's blocks were only 16 meters tall. Our blocks will need to be significantly taller. A pretty typical height for modern skyscrapers is 300 meters. That size is realistic, well, at least structurally. To add more variety, some will be taller, at 400 meters. Others will be shorter, at 200 meters. This will let in more sunlight. And we can even grow some parks and gardens on the tops of the smaller blocks. In this design, the tower blocks are residential, while our shops, offices and infrastructure are inside the base. Every day, people would commute to work by taking an elevator at the center of their block and descending to the building's base. When I run the numbers, it looks like we can fit about 25,000 people per block. In order to accommodate 8.3 billion, that means we'll need 332,000 blocks. And we can use that number to calculate the size of our building. The blocks can be arranged in a square, with each side being 576 blocks long. If each block is 100 meters across, with a gap of 20 meters for each street, we get sides of almost 70 kilometers. In terms of area, that's much larger than our other designs. Although it's not as bad as it sounds. It's smaller than the full metropolitan area of some real-life cities, like Tokyo. But how many people will have a window now? Okay, in this structure almost 30% of the apartments will have a window. That's twice as good as the honeycomb design, and about 100 times as good as the pyramid and cube. It's scalable too. If the population grew, we could extend the base and add extra blocks. Obviously, it would still be extremely hard to build. Also, staggeringly expensive. A basic skyscraper can cost as much as $1 billion. For our building, that would come out at $332 trillion. And we're not even factoring in labor and resource shortages. On the other hand, if the whole world is supposed to live inside, couldn't everyone on the planet just pool their resources and work together to fund the structure? Imagine it, thousands of construction teams flying in from across the world. What do you think? How far could we go if we tried to build it? Finally, there's something missing though. We still need to give it a name. If you have an idea, drop it in the comments and feel free to roast this building as well. Alright, that's it for today. I'll see you in the next one.